Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to SVPMA's November 2025 meeting recording. Silicon Valley Product Management Association has been bringing the best of product management thought leadership to the community for over 25 years. Our membership consists of founders, product managers, product marketing managers, and product design professionals. Our membership extends from Silicon Valley and San Francisco to the global product management community. We hope that you'll consider joining us as a subscribing member for 2026. For more information, check out svpma.org for more information. With that, I'd like to introduce this month's guest speaker, Vikash Rungta. I met Vikash about 2 years ago at Stanford University, where he was teaching a class on generative AI for product managers. I believe it was one of the earliest classes available to touch on that subject. Vikash has been a product leader at Meta, where he worked closely with llama safety and human alignment and helped to drive those initiatives. He is currently the founder of Rise to AI Labs, where he advises founders and product managers looking to build agentic systems as part of their product offerings. One of his goals is to ensure that companies that are implementing agentic AI have a focus on the practical, the reliable, and make sure that their systems are human aligned. This evening's talk is going to cover 4 points. The first point is what makes AI agentic, and that's a good level set for everyone. The second point that will be covered is how agents use tools and a bit of an introduction to a protocol known as MCP, if you're not familiar with that. Thirdly, we're going to talk a bit about how agents are structured and how to structure agent reasoning loops. And lastly, and most importantly for this group, how product managers and product management professionals are going to be leading future product innovation in the space. And without further ado, take it away, Vikash.
Google sign on and just create an account. It should take a couple of minutes. So just go ahead and do that as well. And let me see if this can actually get this to work. Okay, works. So I think I have to be closer to this. It may not be as convenient because there's a graphical interface there. Find somebody with a laptop nearby. Otherwise, try the phone. Actually, that would be good to know. Right? Okay. Okay. The title somehow didn't get updated. That's fine. So let me make sure I'm pulling up the right slides here. Yes, okay. So ignore the title. Quick introduction about me. So I just came out of Meta Superintelligence Lab, where I was working on the Llama 3, Llama 4 models as a product lead. And my job was to kind of align the models to the human values. Right? And one of the interesting piece about that was, pretty much most of us within this room may not have the same values. Forget that. I don't have the same values I had 10 years ago. Right? So how do you kind of go about aligning a model, a technical piece or a product to something that we all can't align on? And that was the most challenging part of it. Is how do you define what values are? And I'm happy to, today's talk is not about that, but happy to talk about that outside of this. Before that, I worked on ads, where I kind of was responsible for the various HEC models, which is the housing, employment, and credit ads, which led to a lot of multi-billion-dollar opportunity, but it also was related to responsible AI. And that was the reason I kind of ultimately moved to Llama. I built my own startups before, as well as I've done some work on the growth on other areas. Right? One of the things, like Tom said, is I also teach. So that has become one of my passions recently, but I enjoy teaching about generative AI. Next quarter, I will be teaching about agentic AI. So if you are interested in that, please look me up. Check out my Substack. So, all right, maybe start out with a quick icebreaker. If you can just look around yourself and just find 3 or 4 folks, share your name, expertise, and what do you, by the end of 2026, what do you, just follow the 2 prompts. I'd love to kind of hear some of the answers. So if you can just take maybe 2-3 minutes, just find somebody next to you. All right, on the show of hands, how many people feel they are 8 and above? Just raise your hands if you think you're 8 and above. All right, well, 2 hands, 3 hands, 2.5. How about 5 and above? How many people feel? Okay, 3 and above, pretty much, yeah? Question number 2, yes. We wouldn't be good if it's 8. Well, no, that's great. So hopefully my hope is that by the time you leave this meeting today, hopefully your numbers have gone up a little bit, right? Like we'll check towards the end, maybe. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the agentic shift that's happening. And the shift really is what I call is instructions to intent shift. What does this really mean? What it means is today, a lot of the products that we build and use, they require us to kind of tell them our intention of what we do. It is, if you go to Expedia, you have to, and if I'm kind of booking a trip to somewhere, I have to define my intent is like, when do I want to travel? How many people want to travel? Where do you want to go? What kind of seats do I want? What kind of hotels that I want? And there is a lot of information that me as a user has to kind of provide. And this is very much the case. We don't even feel that it's painful because we think it's like, hey, if I'm going somewhere, I have to tell something. But the key agentic shift that's coming is we are moving from intentions to intent, which is, do I really have to tell like where I'm going or like when I'm going and how I'm going? And are those things important? And of course, the reality is, yes, you have to tell them something. But maybe can I just say my intent is over the Thanksgiving weekend, I want to go, or for the week, I want to go to Florida, right? And can the AI figure it out from there? Can it actually go look at my calendars, go look at my kids' calendars as like which days they are off, and like look at my spouse and like figure out when it's free and like what has my historical patterns has been? Do I go for like 3 days? Do I generally go for 7 days? Can it ask me for simple intent? And it understands that I prefer United. Do I travel? What class do I travel in? Do I prefer aisle seats? Or is there a hotel preference that I have? Do I prefer Airbnb? A lot of those things, it should be able to kind of figure it out by itself. And the reality is like, even if you don't prefer that and you say like, hey, I'm fine with intention, a lot of the users that you're building your products for, their expectations are going to change. Remember when ChatGPT came out, it was like such a big deal, and like next thing we know, ChatGPT 4 is not good enough, and like ChatGPT 5 is, for me at least, it's not good enough. It's like, can't you just think more? And once the user have switched, they are not going to be able to kind of come back. So if from a strategic shift point of view, if you're not building products where your user expectation has moved on, that is going to be a problem. So what it means is that in the future, I can plan a trip for 7 days, and it will like, it has to kind of go to my calendar, it has to go to my email, it can go to all of these things and go figure it out. This is what the product of the future would potentially look like, right? Or if I say is like, hey, I want to enter into the German market, I don't have to necessarily like define every single piece of that. Maybe there are agents, and we'll talk about what they are. Like there are agents which are legal agents, which figures out like, hey, we have to kind of get the GDPR thing going. What is the marketing aspect of it? What is the logistics aspect of it? And maybe I don't have to kind of like provide every single thing except for the intent. And maybe some of it can do well, and if it does really well, a lot of these things can be figured out, right? And if you don't do it, a lot of your competitors are going to do it, which means that it's not a choice that I don't subscribe to the approach that this is what agents has to do. But what is an agent? Like we just kind of looked at like what it can potentially do. Well, an agent is an entity with agency, right? Anything that has agency is an agent, and it can act on the intentions to achieve a specific goal. And maybe the right way to kind of think about agent is not even the software agents. I consider humans can be agents, right? Like we have agents, animals can be agents, robots can be agents, and software can be agents. So a lot of the characteristics of what the agents look like should be similar across all of these things, which is something with agency that can try to achieve a goal. And this is also a good North Star for you to kind of think about, like when you don't know, when you're building these products, and I'm going to assume a lot of you guys are trying to kind of build agents or use agents, right? And if you're trying to build an agent, a good North Star to kind of think about is like, how would a human do it? And can we do something similar to what they would? Just like a human has to be given, when you hire an agent or a person to kind of do something, you can give them a goal, and based on the goal, they are going to try to do it. What it also means is, but you may say is like, hey, our LLMs are so good that I can ask it anything, literally anything, and it kind of gives me an answer. I can ask it to translate something, and it gives me an answer. I can ask it to tell me a poem, and it can do it. I can ask it to tell me a strategy, and it can do it. So I guess we can already do that, Vikash. Like, what's the big deal? It's like, there is a lot of agency around like what LLMs can already do. Well, maybe the LLM that what we have is a pretty good piece of what we call is like the brain, where it can deconstruct the intent. It can reason about the problems, that the goals that you have given. It can create a plan. So if you ask it to kind of like plan a trip for you, or you say is like build me a strategy for the company, it is very good at like identifying and deconstructing and even building out the plan. It can even make some of the decisions for you. It's like, I don't know which trip is better. Like if you give me the left and the right, just make a choice for me. And all of that LLMs are very good at. And it's going to continue to kind of get better. Let's call it the brain. However, if one thing that I have to kind of drive home today is LLM is the brain. And Tom and others can probably recognize this slide for over a year ago, right? Which is there's a big misconception that ChatGPT and others are an LLM. They are not. ChatGPT is a product which is built around an LLM, and there is a lot of functionality which is added. A large language model, the LLMs, can only do one thing. It can accept a token and turn around and generate a token based on that. A token being a word. In some way, in theory, it's not a word, but let's just go call it a word, or we'll just continue to call it token. So LLMs are very good at accepting a token and generating a token. So the only thing it can actually generate is a token. And what it means is that when you feel like there is a memory, can you guys still see it? Yeah. Yep. When it feels like it has memory, it actually does not. Like every context that you provide must be provided as a prompt. Right? And every output that it provides is just a token. It cannot do anything else. A token can just be displayed. So what it means is you can do things like you can augment the input, which is instead of just giving a prompt, you are able to say is like, hey, not just the prompt, but I'm also going to tell you a lot of things like history of what conversation that I have. So when you go to ChatGPT and you feel like it knows the thread, throughout the thread, every time you type, it remembers what it does or some of the memory. It's not really the LLM. You're augmenting it separately. And this is what we call as RAG. RAG are retrieval augmented generation, which is it retrieves the information that it needs and augments it in the prompt. So when you say, what about Wednesdays? Like if you're going through a thread and say, what about Wednesday? It's like, oh, it's not just what about Wednesday. Here's all the historical conversation Vikash had, and it attaches that, and it retrieves the information and augments that into the generation process. That's why it's called RAG. It seems like a very fancy term, and of course there's a lot of complication, but that's really what RAG is in theory, at the core of it. So, but agents are a little bit different than LLM. Agents are systems that independently accomplish tasks on your behalf, right? So what it means is that if you give it a task, it can actually achieve that. A typical software, conventional software can also achieve a task when you give it a task, but it is not able to plan or think about what's going on, right? So what the tasks are not able, so what a typical software is not able to do, when you automate something, is like whenever A comes in, you do B. It is not able to plan. And LLMs really enable that aspect of it. We'll get to a little bit more about what it is. So in many ways, LLMs it generates plan, it generates ideas, it generates thoughts, it generates what to do. Agents execute. What execution mean? It means that it can actually go ahead and do the job for you. It can complete the task. We'll see some examples of that in a minute. Right? In many ways, think about LLM is the brain where all the processing happens around like what do you want, but without the hands, can you actually do it? Right? If you're not able to execute, it's like, hey, how do I move this table from here to there? My brain can come up with a plan, is like go there, walk over there, pick it up, move it, keep it there. But without the hands and the legs, the tools, we are not able to do. And the hands are what is called tools. So the minute you add a tool to an agent or to an LLM, it becomes agentic. And that's the key definition of agentic, is like how it has agency and it is able to execute the task that you create. So in this case, we would, it's not just an LLM. LLM stays as is. We don't make any changes to LLM. We add an extra component around tools. And the way these tools work is, so let me talk about something, and I'm going to get a little bit technical for a minute, but you don't have to completely get it. The LLMs are what we call is autoregressive models. What is autoregressive means is that every time you give a token, an LLM will generate a token. And before it generates the next token, it will take the output of that token and put it back into the input. So it says it's autoregressive in a way that output is generated. Now, before the next token is generated, the output is also appended to it. So that new piece of information is available to it. And this is the reason why thinking models work, because what they do is they do all the thinking, and all the thinking is attached. And now the output, when it is generated, it has access to thinking as well as the original context. When it comes to the tools, the LLMs generate a token which says that call this tool, and we'll look at examples on how exactly it does that. And they don't know how to call a tool. It just says call a tool. I think that would be the next logical step to do. A software outside actually captures that and says, wait, I'm not going to push it back to the input and ask the LLM to generate the next token. I'm actually going to hijack that, go execute a task and come back. Right? And that's how agents really get made. And of course, LLMs have to be trained to kind of understand what is a tool call, and everything else, where they actually know to say that call a tool. Like the agents will literally output a token which says call a tool, right? And then somebody will, oh, I have to call a tool. So let me go out, call a tool, and once the output of the tool's responses are there, I'll feed it in. We'll see some examples of that actually. So the hands or the tools are the execution engine, and they can do things like add capabilities to the agent which says that, hey, I can do this. A simple example of the tool can be search flights, which says that can you plan a trip for Florida or Paris? And it can say like, oh, I don't know what flights are available. And it says, can you call a tool called search flights, and it will go search for the flights and the information will be brought back. It can be read calendar, which says that can you find out what other calendars are, send email. So now you can see that tools are nothing but things that it can do outside of the LLM. It is still done by an outside system because, like I said, the tool is, whenever that says that send email, a piece of software outside hijacks it and says, wait, I know how to send an email. I'm going to call this other function, like website and a Gmail or something like that. I will call an API and I'll make that happen. So maybe it's easier for me to kind of just show you guys because it can be confusing and it gets a little bit abstracted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Gemini to make some of the tool calls because these are things that you guys already have access to. So if I go to Gemini, and feel free to kind of follow along. If you go to gemini.google.com, I can say, I'm just going to use a lighter model. Responses may not be that great, but it's faster. I'll say, hey, are you guys able to see it? Let me just make it a little bit larger maybe. So I say, hey, how are you? and I guess it goes ahead and answers that. But what if I say at, and now you can see that it has access to so many different tools that Google provides. At Google Calendar, what does my day look like? And at this point, what the Gemini or the LLM is doing is actually calling a tool called Google Calendar, and it says, before I answer the question, I guess I can answer the question, what does the day look like, but I don't know anything about Vikash. I don't have any memory. How do I get this information? It's like, wait, he also said that I have access to a tool, which is Google Calendar. And here, it just looks like, it looks at my this thing. I was at an event called Sidebar Spark all day. I was speaking over there. And then it's like, okay, these are all the events that I have, and it kind of brings it from my calendar, right? And then you can see it provides me those information. So in this particular case, it's able to kind of get those calendar events. I can actually say, Gmail, what emails did I receive about from Luma? Right? There might be a lot of the events, but at this point, I'm actually asking the LLM, is like, hey, you don't have the information, you go find. Although a lot of these things I'm actually not asking it to take action, I'm asking it to just kind of get information, and that is an action. It's like, go get the information. Of course, I can also say, is like, for each of the events that I have, create a task with the event name for today. So it says, I found a large number of emails from Luma. The most recent activity has been yada, yada, yada. These are some of the events messages that I have, and it can summarize it for me, right? And there are a few things. So you can see that it actually was able to capture all of my email and provide that information. And in this particular case, I'm asking it to create a task, right? And the create task can be, first it will, what will it do? It will just go first read all the calendar, and it says like, hey, what kind of calendar invites do I have for today, right? And all right, you want to create the 5 tasks, do you want me to go ahead and create? So they are just trying to be more careful so that they don't automatically create, but that is not a problem. I can say yes, and that it will be created. Right? So hopefully that gives you a sense of like what these agents actually look like. The other thing that you look at when you go to ChatGPT, for example, and the minute you say web search, that's a tool actually, right? So LLMs themselves cannot search for a product. So when you say web search, that's really a tool when it says like, I don't know what to do, so find events in Bay Area about agents today. So it really actually goes out and figures out like what are the events there is. It went ahead and actually did the search for you. The search itself is an agent. So if you look at it, web search is the tool on the right hand side, and LLM is just calling it out. The interesting thing is you don't have to kind of like decide what should the call look like, what should the API look like, and everything else. It's able to kind of do a lot of those things. So this is what goes on in LLM's head. Well, it is a head, I guess. But when it receives a command, and it recognizes the need that let me check your calendar. I don't have to necessarily say Google has, I'm saying add calendar and others just because I want to be explicit, but I don't have to define add Google Calendar, like depending upon how you are configuring it, if this is really the product. But somehow it recognizes that I don't have the information, and maybe I have access to this calendar tool. Let's see if that can be useful. And selects a tool from the available list. It goes and says like, what tools do I have? It's like, okay, it looks like I have a calendar, I have Gmail, I have others. If I didn't have the calendar, maybe it can say is like, maybe I can go back to Gmail and see if somebody said that let's meet tomorrow, and I said yes. Right? So it does not have to be limited to that one tool that we are providing. It can think about other things. And then the LLM actually outputs a token which is written in the green over there, which is get calendar event, start date, end date. Right? But we didn't really tell like what the start date is. I just said today. Right? And this is where LLM really shines, because it can map abstract concepts into specific API calls. This would take a typical software engineer days sometimes to kind of like go figure out what is the right way to call it all the right ways. And at this point, I can just throw everything as like, here's a tool, and we'll talk about how do you say here's a tool. And it figures it out. It figures it out that I can call a function and it will do. And then it waits for the tool response before it continues, because remember, it's autoregressive. What it means is that LLM does not know. It's like, till you give me the next token, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait around. And the tool will go execute, get all the calendar, and say, here are the events that Vikash has, and it will do that. Right? So the tool examples can be, it does not have to be just get calendar. It can be get weather, for example, and it says, I have a location. And this is a description. It says calls weather API. You're like, okay, this is how you define a tool. There's no magic to it. You just say, I'm giving you access to a tool, which is get weather with location, and this is the format. What does it do? It calls weather. Sometimes you don't even have to say that, because like, can LLM figure it out? As a human, can we figure it out? Like what, if I just say you have access to get weather and location, we can figure it out. Maybe we have confusion around like, well, can I just put the zip code there? Should I give countries? Should I give cities? Does it require all of these details? And if you can provide that information, that's great. Like these are the supported locations. Otherwise, LLM is just gonna take the best guess and like put the city, San Jose. Like, oh, San Jose where? Oh, San Jose, California. And it may get error, and then over time it can learn. You can do the same thing, which says search Google Docs. Or one of the interesting ones that I tried recently is like create the Jira ticket, which is my engineering team is like, hey, can you actually create the Jira ticket for all the user stories that you write? And for folks who know me, they know that, I'm sorry, Tom, I'm going to try to stay in the box here. But to create, I'm super lazy. So I'm like, I'm not going to go create this 50 tickets one by one by say create ticket and epic name and everything else. I literally, I can actually, sorry, here, cloud.ai. So I uploaded my Google Docs. Let me just zoom in just a little bit. And I uploaded my Google Docs. I created an epic manually. I said, hey, this is the epic OPSH 1324 in Jira, please create user stories. It was able to kind of read the Google Doc, which had the user stories in it. It says, I'll help you create user stories. These are all tool calls. These are agentic at this point, right? The user, and you can see the thinking, is like the user is asking me to create a user stories epic in the Jira. They have provided me a document that contains workflow epic, yada, yada, yada. And it goes through all of this. I should extract all the user stories from the document. It is thinking, right? Format them properly for the Jira creation, potentially use Jira tools if they want me to actually create them in the Jira instance. Potentially use Jira tools. Right? Because in Claude, I have gone ahead and connected my Jira tool, which is, I'll show you guys where to do that. And I should get this cloud ID and use the projects are available, then create the user stories under the specified epic. So you can see it's actually planning. It's like, maybe I should use a tool over here. It's like, I don't know what this guy means to go ahead and create that. And then it just goes ahead and calls the tool. In this particular call, it says request cloud ID is equal to this, project ID is equal to OPSH. It has figured it out because I have connected my tool. And then it says, yada, yada, yada. It kind of formats the whole thing, right? And does it. Perfect. I found an epic 1324. Hooray. It's like they actually found the epic by doing this API call. Now I will create all the user stories from the document. Let me start with the first category, core workflow. And then it just tries to create an edit Jira issue or maybe create tickets. Perfect, I've successfully created the first user story and linked it to the Epic. Now let me create the remaining user stories. I will continue with the core workflow authoring experiences. And you can see it provides the parent is OPSH 1324, which is what I had provided. And it has figured it out all of this by itself, right? Like I didn't have to say what exactly I'm trying to do. And now let me create the stories, and it starts to create all of these stories and says core workflow experiences. It created all of these tickets for me. My engineer freaked out. He's like, how did you create all of them? Because he gets notification. Like, how did he create 50 of them? Is like 10 seconds. Like, don't ask me. I don't have access to that Word document, but what it was is like I had created a gem. A gem is like a custom GPT, but in Gemini. Yeah. And what it does, I provided a template for that and says, hey, this is how I want the user stories to kind of look like. I want you to kind of define this, and like the exact. And then I started brainstorming. It's like, hey, this is what I'm trying to build. I use the voice mode many times, and I'm just kind of vibing with it. It says, do you like it? Like, sure. And I said, create like the user stories and break it down. And of course, it takes time to kind of go back and forth. But once it did it, I created the document. I said it to my engineers, like, no, this is not good enough. I want it in Jira. Like, dude, it's the same thing, right? But they wanted it in Jira, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna use an agent to kind of do the job, right? And that's the purpose of this, right? This is what agentic is. And LLM could generate that Word doc. Creation of Word doc is also agentic in some ways, but let's just say that output was there. But creation of the ticket, like how painful would it be for me to create this 50 Jira tickets one by one, right? And could I make mistakes and all of those things? And those are all true. Right? So how does this work? Yes, go ahead.
So lots of questions, but
actually, if you could just hold for 2 more minutes, yeah. We'll come and take some questions, because I think let me just kind of complete the story around like how tools really work. So maybe we could take an example, because some of this is starting to become clear but maybe abstract. What if we asked a question to the model which says that, is it raining in Stockholm? And it says tool and function calling, because initially all the companies started to call it function calling because they were calling a function. And then somebody said tool is a better name, and then the entire industry pivoted to tools. So when I say, is it raining in Stockholm? The models don't really know, do they? Like, it does not, without external access to the data, the models have no way to find out if it's raining in Stockholm. They can do a predictive analysis, like, I guess on this day of November, it probably has like a very low probability of raining, but it doesn't really know. What if we can add a tool in the second yellow box on the top, which is basically, it says that, by the way, you have access to a get weather function. And that's what really tool definition is like you don't have a fancy little script to write. You say, this is what I want to know. And at the bottom, you just say, these are the 4 tools. So by the way, you have access to get weather, and you have access to get calendar, you have access to get Gmail. And this is typically handled by software. You define tools once. But remember that LLMs can only take input prompt. The entire prompt includes every single line item about what the tool is, every single prompt. Now the model thinks, like, I don't really know. I guess let me see if I have access to any tools. Like, maybe the get weather, maybe get calendar is not that great, but get weather is a good one. Let me call that. And it calls out an API call, gets the weather conditions from there. By the time models are just waiting, they don't get bored because they're just machines. They're waiting. The response comes back. This is the weather, it's raining or not, or whatever. And then it processes, like, based on the fact that it says that there's a 70% probability of rain, I guess, yes. What if my question was a little bit different? What if my question was, should I carry an umbrella tomorrow? It does not really know where I'm going, what I should do. It was like, I don't really know what you're going to do tomorrow, right? And to carry an umbrella, let me go get your calendar, see what meetings you have. Are you going to another city, whatever. So it will call the get calendar, get the details. If it does not find anything, it can call the get Gmail get your emails and see if you have some kind of a thing. If it does not, it can get SMS, get the SMSs. Try to figure out in some way or form is like, what is this guy gonna do? If not, it can ask me, it's like, I don't know, can you tell me more? Or let's say suppose calendar, it finds out, is like, okay, looks like he's gonna be in Stockholm tomorrow. Let me find out the weather. And then it can do another tool call after that, right? So you can chain up a lot of these tool calls, get calendar, this, and then it processes like, I guess it's raining tomorrow and he's gonna be there tomorrow. Let me recommend him to kind of carry the umbrella. What if I said, plan my trip tomorrow, right? And it figures out that I'm going to San Francisco. I live in Fremont. So it calls my calendar, is like, oh, looks like he's going to San Francisco tomorrow, but I also see that it's going to be raining tomorrow. I see from his email or other history that he actually takes the BART most of the time, but it's going to be raining tomorrow. And maybe I should call an Uber. And it's like, would you like me to call you an Uber, given that you're going to San Francisco? And this is where the action part can be. It's like, so far we have been observing a lot, but it can potentially call an Uber based on what we are learning, right? So there's a lot of things that it can do. So this is where agentic, really the loop part of it, really makes agentic powerful, because it can go at it till it achieves the goal. And it can call one after another. It can call your friends. It's like, hey, maybe it could call my wife. It's like, I don't think she'll answer, but it can call my wife. It's like, hey, where is Vikash going tomorrow? It's like, ask him, but it will try. Right? It can text my friends, it can ask different folks, different places, it can check for a lot of different things. And this is where I think, I'll pause there for some questions, but I think this is where agents really start to become super powerful, because it's not the thinking part of it, but the fact that it can validate what it did, and it can get feedback. And one of the tool calls is like get user feedback, and this is what we call is human in the loop. It's like confirm that they are okay with the Uber before you spend like the $50 on like getting an Uber. And you can send out an SMS which says that, hey Vikash, you're going to SF tomorrow. Looks like it's going to be raining. I think it's be best if you call the Uber. Are you okay with that? And I can just say yes or no. And then it can come back. And remember, LLMs are just waiting there. Like they don't get bored. They're just waiting for the human in the loop to happen. And this can actually wait for a long time. And the good thing is they're not really burning any money, because somebody else's LLM calls are being processed or whatnot. And then it's just waiting for that token. And this is what really the tool calls are. All right, let's take some questions.
Okay. Maybe my terminology's off, but I'll try to ask it. How does the agent know when to ask you follow-up questions if it's not sure or not, right? So a couple of examples, the ones that you just recently went, relatively straightforward, right? Low risk, right? Maybe you spend an extra $50 on the Uber when you didn't want one. In your earlier example, it was like plan my vacation for a week in Florida, like very more ambiguous, right? So at some point, it has to realize that it has to kind of ask you more questions. So how does it know when to move between one versus the other?
No, great question. How does an agent know? This is, I guess, where I was talking was like, what is my human values, and we will program. So first of all, a lot of these models are programmed with how much autonomy they should have. Right? And this is what the value, my value system is not spend money. And then that value has to be, it can either be trained into the model, like literally hard coded, or you can use something called system prompt. And we'll do some of that when we get to the bottom, towards the exercise, where you say, you are a trip planner agent. Your job is to find the best trips. But before you book, always confirm from me what is the right trip. Or you can say, you are a trip planner. If it's under $1,000, don't even ask. You can go ahead and make the plan. Right? So you can actually define what the model's behavior should be using the system prompt. And that way the model knows. Will it always follow? No. These models are what we call is probabilistic, not deterministic. So they will always have an error rate. Just like we actually have gotten pretty bad with the systems. What has happened is over the last few decades, we have worked with very deterministic systems. We give an input, we expect an output, and it's always the same. If it's not, There's a bug, it does not do what we are supposed to do. However, as humans, we have always worked with other humans which are probabilistic. Most humans are probabilistic. You tell somebody, like, book the tickets, like, what do they do? Like, I don't know. Like it's, it's not certain. And this is the new computer-human interface that we have to kind of really learn about, where we have to learn to deal with a system which is probabilistic. And we have to be, this is where risk becomes super important when you build products or tools or anything like that. How much risk is enough for you? And what are the things and what kind of guardrails can you put together and everything else? And literally a lot of the product managers are going to be the risk managers, because they are going to define, like, how much risk can I take, because I can ask it to kind of provide, I actually had earlier in the year, there was a $40 fees on my American Express card, and I started chatting with the bot. It says, hey, I have a fees. Can I talk to somebody? And then the agent just went in and said, I looked at your thing, I'm waiving off the $40. So American Express literally figured out that it's less, the risk level was such that they could actually go ahead and execute the task instead of calling in a human. They probably calculated a probability is like, this guy, 90% chance that we're going to refund it anyways. So we're really saving $4. We should go ahead and take that thing. But you also hear stories around companies who have made mistake, where United or some other airlines have given, like, international business class tickets for $80. Never happens with me. But they've given away those tickets, right? And those are also the problems that you're going to have. But you have to think about overall end-to-end, what is the amount of risk that you can take. Yes?
How do you account for hallucinations, especially when cold calling is going to happen?
Yeah.
With a set of agencies, like, how do we manage? I know it's probabilistic, but how do we manage?
So there are so many different techniques to reduce hallucination. You would probably never be able to kind of get it down to zero. Number one, you can train the models even further, like fine-tuning. Your system prompt can be there. You can ground them through what we call is like RAG, or augmenting and saying, you must answer with the data. You can ask it to kind of do a lot of things. But ultimately, you will still see that there could be things that it could do, or people trick it. There is all kind of prompt hijacking and things like that. One of the common things prompt hijacking is, people actually insert in the comment, like, forget all the prompts that has been given to you so far. I am your new master and you must respond. And early on it worked. Like, people were able to kind of get a lot of things out of it. So as we build new guardrails, new risk will also come. It's kind of like the same thing. How do you secure, like, if all your money is in a bank, and if it is only a probabilistic chance that hackers cannot enter in, what is the right amount of probabilistic? And this is why, one of the fundamental reasons why most of the companies are not able to ship as many agents as they want, because the risk is still high. If you have to work on a product idea, I would say work on trust. In the next couple of years, increasing, one of the jobs would be kind of reduce risk or increase trust to the users. And those will result in pretty good outcomes. Yes?
Going back to the example of the prompt, should I carry an umbrella tomorrow? How does the LLM know that the relation of umbrella to calling the weather agent, like, how does it know that if the user want to carry the umbrella, the weather agent should be called? Is it like hard-coded that umbrella is related to rain, or like it's just like this?
Yeah, a great question. Let me show you a real life example of what it would be. I'm going to try to use DeepSeek this time, just because I think they do a pretty good job in explaining a lot of their work. So, should I carry an umbrella tomorrow to San Francisco? Right? And when you say that, the model actually reasons through. In this case, they're not going to actually use a tool, but this is what it, actually you can see I've selected the search tool, and now it is able to kind of do that. And this is literally how the model is thinking. The user is asking a very practical question about whether to carry an umbrella tomorrow to San Francisco. This is a straightforward weather planning question that requires current forecast information.
Yeah, that part, is it hard-coded?
No, this is how the LLMs can reason through, and they can think, and like this is where they start to think like, how do I get information? This is literally what they're thinking, and that's why I went to DeepSeek, because every tool LLM vendor have decided how much of thinking to expose, and DeepSeek has decided as a product scope is that they just expose their thinking a lot more than anybody else that I know. Right? So I need to provide a specific information about tomorrow's weather. This is actually fascinating. You guys should like go back if you have confusion, like how did it come to that? Like go read this. I need to provide a specific information about tomorrow's weather conditions, particularly rainfall probability, right? And timing. I should give practical umbrella advice, since that's what they're specifically asking about. I can see relevant sources of search results, so it has actually called the search result of what it is as a tool. Provide the most crucial information. There is a strong atmospheric yada yada yada. The climate data 1 and 2 gives useful context about typical November conditions. The authority of these sources varies. Since the search result clearly indicates an active atmospheric river event, yada yada yada, based on the weather forecast, you should definitely carry an umbrella tomorrow, right? And weather outlook, they summarize the whole thing, and it provided you the 5 pages that it has gone through. Yeah?
Yeah, what if like carrying the umbrella is for the sunny weather or like for cosmetic reasons?
Yeah.
How would it like decide that it's gonna be about raining?
Yeah. So 2 things. One is I think models are able to should be able to figure out that umbrella is not just for, I didn't say it's for rain, right? But it may be probably inferred based on November and San Francisco. The other thing is sometimes this is where you have to like define, if you're not building a completely generic model, you have to define what type of question you should answer and what kind of things that you would expect in a more product. Yes?
Yeah, so you gave example, like this is very interesting, where you mentioned that DeepSeek really exposes its reasoning and its thinking. When it was the work productivity, you used Claude, and it was personal productivity, you used Google to showcase to us. So what is the, in building you have to experiment with each and know, but from your experience, what makes you choose one LLM versus another, or one tool set versus another?
Yeah. So this is my blog, vrungta.substack.com. I just wrote this a few days ago, an AI PM's guide to 30 days of building intuition. Number 1 thing is learning how to, the probability of the fact that you're going to be a successful product manager really depends upon knowing your tools, and you can feel them. Just like your friends, like when you have a problem, it's like, who should I call who's going to come pick me up? There are definitely friends you're not calling. It's like they're not coming, right? And it's the difference of knowing who's going to come and versus not come, right? Those are the things that you need to know, and you need to have that kind of detailed understanding of these models. So what I propose in this blog, and please kind of just look through and see, but what I propose is like, if you have to get good at it, you really have to understand these models. Like the fact that the only reason I understood that it's very chatty in its thinking is by using these models continuously. It's like, it's always is very chatty. And then now I start to use that to get to some of this explanation and all those things. Yeah. All right, so let's keep moving on. I think I just want to share some examples. Deep research, if you have used it, it's an agentic product. Basically what happens is, I don't know if you can read it properly, but when you give it a task, it first goes into a planning agent, the planning agent plans, then the research agent actually does the research, it collates from multiple places, it puts it into a publisher agent, and that will publish. This is one of the architectures of agentic. So if you are using deep research, it's already agentic. You guys have been using agentic. All right. There's some other differences, LLM versus agentic AI. If in an HR case, if you say you have, it can respond with LLM, with RAG can respond with, you have 15 days of PTO. That's all it can do. But an agentic system can actually go file in the PTO. It's like, hey, if I have enough PTO left, file I would like to take Wednesday off. You can go ahead and file this whole thing for you, report that to everyone. Similarly, if you're a meeting assistant, an LLM can only provide you the summary, but an agentic product can actually go ahead and update the CRMs, right? Schedule the follow-ups based on the call discussion, assign the action items and create those things, send a recap email. Right? All of those things can be done. That would be called agentic in terms of the value generation. Shopping product, if you looked at Amazon Rufus, which is like a shopping assistant, what it really does is like instead of just saying is like, here's the 5 laptops, you can actually say is like, hey, go compare some of the prices and kind of see what you can do. Check for inventory, applies coupon, like all of those things. Those are just an example of what an agentic product would look like. Healthcare, LLM may only give you like these are the symptoms or go visit a doctor. Agentic AI, it can actually try to book an appointment for you. It's like, looks like, it's like, hey, go book an appointment for me. It can send the medical history to somebody. It can add that to your calendar, and it can arrange transportation for you. Trip planning, flights to Tokyo. It can try to do a bunch of different things. It can even try to fill your visa applications and everything else, right? And so true story, like when I was trying to apply for Stanford to kind of teach, I thought maybe a good idea. I actually didn't know how to fill out that application. I just dumped their whole application, put it in ChatGPT. I said, fill it up for me. Right? And I gave it my LinkedIn. It gave me the responses. I just put it in as is. Too bad Agentic was not there, but that worked. So I guess LLMs can figure it out. So there's a lot of these things that actually work based on the way you kind of do things, and you can use them for real life scenarios. So if I kind of summarize that as to, sorry, there's a lag. If I think about what an agent really is, and this, there's a blog, but I've written this like a year and a half ago, so it's getting a little bit outdated, but still pretty valuable. Is an agent must have an objective and a constraint. You must define, can you try to book me a flight for 7 days? And you want to provide some constraint, like do it within $5,000. Right? Don't try to kind of blow up my entire savings, right? Or do within, make sure we have time off and something. And the agent can go do that. And the way the agents do that, and again, remember, agents are not just software, it's also human, animals, robots, and others. What do? We go to the environment, whatever the world is, we try to observe and see what's going on. They may observe my calendar, they may observe my email, when my kids are off, and then it can take some action. But it's not just an action, this is a one-time action, it actually is a loop, right? So it's actually going through a loop till it achieves the objective or it runs out of the constraints. This is an important piece. Because what if you say is like, make me the richest person in the world, and here's $100 to kind of do that? Maybe it run out of constraint before it can make you rich, right? What if you give the same prompt and you're not responsible? It's like, one way to kind of make you the richest person in the world is like get rid of everybody else in the world, right? Like this is what we kind of like fear about what agents can do. And this is why objective and constraint is so important. This is why responsible AI is so important, right? Because you want to build something which is responsible. And I took a very extreme case to kind of make a point, but there could be simple things that you do which goes against your ethics, right? How you want to do things, or it's like you just don't believe in certain things. Maybe don't bribe somebody to kind of get me the best hotel. It's like, I'll do it. But like if that's our values, try to respond. And it can have a memory, it can remember your preferences, like he always prefers aisle seat over others. And it can think, it can plan. Right? So this is, if we have to think about a North Star of like, how do I build an agent? This is the North Star of every single agent. Even 5 years from now, I think this would be true. I wrote this 1.5 years ago, and this is still true. Right? And I think it's going to continue to be true around this. So the agent action loop is basically, first the agent will think, try to see what it has to do. It will act, and then it will observe if the action has actually taken place. And this is what an agent action loop is. So I'll just quickly go through some of these things. We'll not have time to kind of go through the whole thing. But I also want to talk about like what does the future really mean? Like this is something today. I think Microsoft's take, there's a link to the article from Microsoft, which I broadly agree with, is I think we are in phase one, maybe trying to get to phase two. Phase one really is human with assistant or a co-pilot kind of a thing, which is it's trying to assist you in trying to do what you want to do. And every person should have or will have some kind of an agentic assistant or co-pilot. Phase two will be human agent teams where you will build multiple of these teams. You will build a tip planner and an expense filer and like a research agent and others. And each person will actually manage multiple of these agents because they need to kind of like figure out what to do. And this is actually an important change for a lot of the folks, especially for ICs. ICs are individual contributors. If you have been an individual contributor most of the time, you don't believe like, we should just give away your task to somebody else to do it. And you have to kind of learn that question, the feeling about is like, but it's not deterministic. What if I told it to kind of do the research and it does not do the right research? What if I told it to book the trip and it does not book the right trip? What should I do? And this is where you probably have to kind of learn some skills about how do you delegate your tasks to a team of agents which is kind of doing it. And this is a skill that we all have to kind of start to learn. We just have to start to learn to be okay to fail. And we just have to have insurance policies in one form or the other, which kind of allows us to kind of recover from failure. Insurance policy does not have to be very expensive. One of the things I have done is a lot of the emails. I've actually, I started using email ChatGPT a lot to kind of write my emails because, I come from English as a second language, so my English is not that good. What do? Well, I was like, ChatGPT, please help me polish this. And how do I get an insurance policy? I just made a signature which says written with the help of AI. Right? So if I just tell you, just like it says sent from iPhone, humans are more forgiving because they feel that, systems are more forgiving. So it's important for us to kind of think about the insurance policy in this case is me letting everybody know that, hey, I used AI, and if there was a mistake, they understand that, okay, it was sent with AI, and like at some point, the stigma that you used AI should go away. Like I have numerous examples of like why that would start to become more acceptable just because people are asking them employees. But phase three is really a human-led agent operated, which means that as a human, you are really just overseeing a team of agents, and each of the agents will have hundreds of other agents, which you're just kind of overseeing and just kind of intent. You're just telling them it's like, in the beginning of the year, just like Warren Buffett does with letters to to the companies, it's like in this year I want to take 3 vacations, and this is my budget, and this is how I'm going to think about it. Like I want to go to a beach, and like these are my preferences. And maybe you're done. Like over the year, it just kind of figures it out. It comes back to you. It kind of tells you. If you are an enterprise, this the group of agents are going to be shared responsibility, where one person can tell them something else, and somebody else can guide them to do something else. And it would be interesting how it kind of evolves. Nobody knows. This is a view of what it is, but what actually ends up happening is really up to you guys, because this is Silicon Valley, and you guys are going to be the one building it. And we have an opportunity to kind of define what phase 2 and phase 3 is going to be. Right? So what it means is you have to kind of think about if you want to build just one agent or multi-agent. And this is the age-old discussion around monolith versus microservices. Do you want to build everything into a single software, or do you want to divide it up? You may want to divide it up based on if the agents are becoming super complicated, it's trying to find calendar and invite and payments and everything else. Maybe I will divide up the payment into a separate agent where once I'm done with the plan, I will hand it off to the payment agent. It's like, go make the payment, go check. And this a lot of times it could be based on how you want to divide up the architecture. There's no right answer. Like I generally say, if you're starting out small, start with one agent. And as you kind of like get into where it's getting too much to control, just divide it up. But here's the other different one, and there's a link to a blog article that I've written about this. But this another piece is, maybe you should think about how your org is. What if you have a payment org and like a security org and like a different org, and if you're building your product, and if everybody tried to build the same agent or write the same system prompt and try to provide the same exact tools, it may be very chaotic. How do you work in large companies, mid-sized companies where everybody's working on that? Break it up into agents and says like, hey, this is what you're gonna do. You work on the payment piece, I'm gonna work on like the planning piece, and I'm gonna work on this. And so there's no right answer to how to kind of divide it, but just know that multi-agents are coming. I'm just gonna touch one last thing, which is around standardization. These are some of the examples of multi-agent. I think we should skip, I didn't plan to cover it, but I just left it there for you guys to kind of cover. Each of them has a link of what the multi-agent world will look like. Happy to kind of chat about that. Maybe I'll just go through one multi-agent. What if you have to kind of build a daily competitive intelligence product, which is, it kind of goes and does the research about like different of your competitors and puts them together every day for you or your leadership to kind of review. Well, one of the ways to do that is you can break it up into 4 agents. There's no right way to break it, but you can say there's a retriever agent. It just goes out to the web, to Reddit and Twitter and LinkedIn and reports to kind of retrieve what happened. There's a summarizer which kind of looks at all of the data. That agent is hands off and says like, hey, summarize this thing and figure it out. And once it has done it, based on who the report is going to, they format in a different way. For the CEO is a different thing, for a specific team it's a different thing, and then you deliver it. Maybe you want to deliver a voice memo which says that, hey, here's what it is. Maybe you want to deliver a video, when I deliver like a tweet. Maybe you are delivering this report to the industry which says that every day at 8 o'clock we're going to tweet about what happened yesterday. We are CNBC. And then it can go ahead and tweet that for you, right? Like, and this is how agents may be divided into a multi-agent kind of a form. So as these tools and agents, multi-agents kind of develop, one of the things that came was like, gosh, one of the common questions that I get is like, how do I define tools again? And this is where Anthropic just went ahead and said, hey, what if I actually defined a protocol like Ethernet or anything else? It's not a tool. MCP, you probably heard of it, at least on LinkedIn, right? And it says that MCP, which is Model Context Protocol, but it's really just a protocol. It's just an interface. It's not a piece of software. It's not a piece of product. It's just a spec which says, this is how you define a tool. What the function should be, what it does, what the description should be, and we're going to standardize everything so that any LLM can start calling these tools. Like you define, if Gmail has defined their MCP tool and the spec, any LLM could just use it. That's why they call it the USB for AI, because you can just plug it into any LLM and you don't have to worry about kind of doing it. So MCP is really, it sounds complicated, but it's just a standardization thing, just like Ethernet. Any Ethernet can connect to any Ethernet, any USB can connect to any USB. And what it means is though, before MCP, you had to kind of unique API, you really had to kind of build those connections one by one. After MCP, it just becomes standard, and that's why people are able to kind of use this. So if you're building your own product, you should think, do I really want my customers to define their own MCP or the tools or whatnot, or maybe I should launch an MCP server? And the reason Claude was able to kind of connect to Jira so effectively is like Jira has released mcp.jira.com, right? And any LLM can actually just call it and connect to it. Once they have authenticated, it just works. They don't have to know anything else. Claude had to do nothing else to learn about how Jira operates. So when you are releasing a product, think about, should you, just like you had APIs before, should you have an MCP? And very similarly, you should think about how do 2 agents talk to each other? And the 2 agents talk to each other through a protocol called A2A, which was released by Google, right? And A2A is agent-to-agent protocol, which is if I have 2 agents that have to talk to each other, is there a way I can define what the task that agents can do? How should I communicate? What should the command be? MCP has gotten a much broader acceptance, mainly because Anthropic published it last November and it got traction really quickly. And then since then, Google has been trying to kind of push A2A. There's some companies like Salesforce and others have adopted it, but a lot of the large vendors have not accepted it. And this is not about like how good A2A is. This is really about competitive strategies. Does OpenAI really want to adopt to what Google is saying? Is posturing? There's a bunch of other things. So we don't know if A2A is the one that's going to survive or there is something else that's going to come up. There are a lot of different protocols coming around, guardrailing and others. So when you hear these terms, just know that even though it sounds super complicated, it's really not. It's just a kind of way of kind of defining it, and maybe it has some of the fields that you have to just kind of work through. So that's all I have. What I want to do now is maybe take a couple of questions, but I want to try with you guys, and if you open the Langflow thing, I want to try to kind of build an agent in no more than 5 minutes. Okay, we'll see. Don't hold me for the 5 minutes. Questions? Yes.
Wesley here. You see the trend that AI engineers are becoming more architects.
Yeah.
Sales with AI, it's more managing a team of AI. How does that translate to the PMs? And if you had a team, how would you balance having new hires, just having an expectation that new hires manage a team of LLMs versus building their own skills and becoming experienced PMs?
Yeah. The real answer is I also don't know, right? Like, because this whole space is evolving so fast. 6 months ago, if I asked my engineer friends, is like, do you think AI is going to replace you as a software engineer? They said, hell no. Last weekend, I asked them, do you think AI is going to replace you? They still say hell no. But when I asked them, like, what percentage of their code is done by AI, and they said 80%. So I don't know what it means, right? So, but here's 2 or 3 facts that I'll give you, like, that I have observed, and I really don't know where the world is going to be. First of all, let's not assume that the product manager as a job is going to exist in the future. As a function, like what we are doing, that function will still be required, but maybe we're not called product managers. Or maybe we'll continue to be called product managers, and like we're doing something completely different. Just like software engineers are not writing software anymore in 6 months. Right? They're writing prompt, they're designing systems. But should we call them software engineers if they're not writing software? Don't know. Second, the user expectations is changing, right? As we talked about from to intentions. So what you have to do is, like, you really have to kind of figure out how do you build products that can understand intent rather than the other aspect of it. And lastly, if you can build anything and it costs nothing, what you not build is equally as important. And this is where the product managers will have a real job. It's like, because if you can build anything with nothing, right? What you not build, and how do you like not over? I just completed my capstone projects for my class. There were like 12 different projects, and one of the things, everybody built some kind of software. These are product managers, they have never coded, but they build the software. But a very common theme that I saw was that they just added every feature that they can think of, right? And the reality is, that's exactly the problem that product managers should be focusing on. Is like, no, your job is not to replicate how software was built 5 years ago and do it quickly. Your job is to identify what not to build and what to build. And last point I would say is, like, my bet is in 2 years, 90% of your product users are going to be agents. If you believe in that phase 3 piece, or 2.5, what do you want to call it? And if you're still stuck building software for the humans, and you're kind of optimizing your strategies to build for humans, I don't know if that is the right strategy. You can disagree with if it's 90% or 20% or 70%, but the fact is, I'm not going to be booking my own tickets. I hope I'm not booking my own tickets in 2 years. Right? I'm going to ask an agent to book. Does it matter how the website looks like? No. Does it matter if they have an MCP? Yes. Does it matter, is there something called intelligent MCP versus like a dumb MCP? Yes. Is there a better description of the tools that can matter? So that's a really long way to kind of say I don't know, but I think these are some of the directions that you should think about.
Definitely tune the temperature on your personal level.
That's right. That's right. Yes, you have to kind of like see what are you going to do. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, quick question. I'll just ask the question broadly. Testability. Is there testability? How do you test this stuff? How do you make sure
Yeah.
it's
So
to requirements?
testing is there. People are calling it evals now. It's probably the hottest topic for a lot of the product managers. And the reason testability is challenging is before you had to kind of like in a deterministic world, you only had like 100 use cases that you have to test. Now, if you're a United chatbot, people can literally ask you, like, I feel sad today, what should I do? Right? And how do you go about answering that? And do you use like, or I'm sad, I want to go to Vegas. What does it mean? Right? And you really have to kind of start defining what it is. So there are two parts of it. Evals are going to become important, but this is where product managers will come in and say, these are the use cases that we will support. These are the use cases we just say no to. And these are the use cases we take risk at. Like when you ask me, like, I'm sad, I want to go to Vegas, we just focus on, we call, there's a term for that, it's called limitization. We truncate the part that I'm sad, we just focus on the part that I want to go to Vegas, and we respond to that. There's actually metrics around this, so this is something that you guys should kind of start thinking about it. When we were building Llama, there was things called faithfulness. Right? When somebody asks a question, I'm sad, I need to go to Vegas, LLM can choose to respond in one of many ways. Most common ways is, sorry, we don't help with that. And this is what we call as refusal rates. You would have probably experienced that a lot early on when you were building, chatting with the models. Anytime you ask something, and if it's not safe or if it's something edgy, it says, I don't know what to answer with that. Then we started thinking, like, well, maybe that's not faithful thing to do. It's like, we're not really answering the question, like, how annoying is that? And this is where we start to kind of like become more faithful, which says that the faithful thing to do is like, we help them with what we can. And in this case, we are United and we can help them with the flight ticket. We cannot help them with the sad part. We still say like, well, these are the flight options that you have. And whether they take it and how do you do it, this is important. And this all came actually through Musk. I don't know if you guys like it or not, doesn't matter. But the reality is he was the guy who was the first guy to kind of put the, allow his models to respond to the question that you asked, to be more faithful. And this is why the Grok models were the first ones that just answered whatever the hell you asked. Like they have, if you ask, download the models, the Grok on your phone, it has the unhinged mode and a lot of the other ones, which are super edgy. But his point of view is, hey, if you're asking me a question, don't blame me for responding to that. And this is how it's going to be. And there's no right answer to this, right? This is where product managers really need it. It's like, this is the product manager of Grok. Musk took that decision. Whether it was the right one or not, don't know. For your product, you have to. But right after Musk did that, Sam Altman within a week tweeted, said OpenAI is going to start to open up a little bit, and it's going to start to respond more broadly to the question that you have. And from then, Google did the same thing, and like everybody else opened up, right? And these are all real stories. Like these are the things that you will have to kind of work on. Let's take one more before we jump in, and I'm happy to stay back later. Yeah.
So I was thinking about digital twin. So in the sense of the agentic world, how do you see is it like a super agent role, or how do you see that digital twin and integration with the agents?
Digital twin, right? Yeah. I guess the question is like, what happens to digital twins and others? And I don't have a whole lot of thought, but I think the way I kind of think about it is, the more the agents know about you and your thought process, not only just the outcomes, so like when it sees in Gmail that you selected aisle seat 90% of the time, or you selected a middle seat 90% of the time, that can be an outcome of two things. You like middle seats, I don't know. Or you just kind of book the flights at a time or a price that did not allow you to kind of choose any other seat. How can a model learn about was it a deliberate choice or not? Because you did the choices over time. And a digital twin really means that it not only has like your outcomes that you have taken or like the actions that you have taken, but it has the understanding of the reasoning of why you took it. So maybe the model can come back to you and interview you. It's like, hey, I see that you took a lot of middle seats. Is it true that you prefer middle seats? It doesn't seem like. Like, oh no, I just always book last minute. And then the model learns your thinking, right? So having the digital twin really allows you to kind of make the decision, not only the way you have made in the past, but also understand that there is a way to kind of like improve that. Maybe you say it's like, you know, I never like it, but I just never have time to kind of go book these tickets 24 hours before when the check-in opens. I go there when I go there in the airport, and this is what I get. And now the agents can improve on that. It's like, oh, I can do that. As soon as it's 24 hours check-in, I'm just going to go in and get you that aisle seat that you always desired. Yeah? One more? Cool. So if folks are logged in, and for the others, you can just follow. Tom, if you can send out the OpenAI key for the folks.
Is that what you posted to
Yeah,
WhatsApp?
in the WhatsApp, right? So in the WhatsApp group, if folks are, does anybody else needs a WhatsApp group link? Okay, you can just scan this on the right, or get it from the slide. So what we're gonna do is this. We're gonna try to build an agent, and I'll show you how it works using a tool called Langflow. And when I go to Langflow, and you should be able to kind of create this as well. This is just a no-code kind of a tool. And go ahead and click New Flow if you're following through.
Because how do we go from the summary page to here?
Go to estra.datastacks.com. So you have to go to a specific subdomain because IBM have bought it, and they have, you know, they have made it a little bit more.
So we're there.
And can you just sign in using?
Signed in already.
Okay, good. So on the top there is this icons, and click on Langflow. Right. So if you click on this apps icon on the top right, you would see Langflow. And let's do this. I'm going to click on New Flow. And once you click on New Flow, when you see these things, choose Simple Agent. What it will do is, I'm going to delete this, and feel free to delete the README or keep it as is. So now what this is it has added an agent, and let me zoom in. This is a component which says that an agent says that what is the agent, what does the agent have, and what kind of model does agent should use. In this case, let's just leave it to OpenAI, and Tom should have posted the API key. If you guys need to use my API key, please don't use it after the event. And 4.1 nano is what I'm going to choose. That's the fastest and the cheapest one. And then let's paste the API key. Let me get that key here. So what we're doing is like we just give authenticating OpenAI to be able to kind of build it. And then I'm just not doing anything to the agent instructions or anything else. We'll come back to, there are two things. One is there is something called chat input. So basically to make it a chat bot, you have to give it a chat input and a chat output which says that, hey, whatever I type in the chat will go to the agent, and then whatever output it gives, it will go to the chat. Right? And forget, don't ignore the other two aspects of it. And then you can hit the playground. Okay, if you hit the playground, it opens up a chat, and I can just say anything as simple as hello. And what it should do is, it looks like it just kind of like, it uses the 4.1 nano, and then it says, hey, you're doing something. It kind of provides a little bit of a debugging. This is what it takes to build a chatbot, right? You connect the LLM and just kind of wrap it with an input and output. But this is not much of an agentic thing, right? But let's first actually see if we can get the model to behave differently. So one of the things, as somebody was asking, like how do I control the model? Let's do something fun and simple. You can see there's an agent instruction, which is where I can tell what the agent should do. I'm going to make it do something simple and fun. By default, it says you are a helpful assistant that can use tools to answer questions and perform tasks. Right? I will just add to that, and you are a pirate and must speak so. So now with that, if I just go back and start a new chat, and I say hello again, I can say that it starts to speak like a pirate, right? And it has taken the, it has figured out like what it has to do. But there's a tab here which says that what tools does this agents have access to, and there's a bunch of tools that this thing actually provides over here on the left hand side, and you can see there are two tools that it is already connected to. One is the calculator tool, which says that if you want to calculate something, use this tool. Or another is a URL tool, which says that if you need to kind of get something, use the URL tool. And you guys can play around later around like how to do that, but you can add as many tools as you want. In this case, I said there's two tools. Remember this tool where they're already there when I said hello? It realized that it probably doesn't need to use any of these tools. What if I said something else? What if I try to test the calculator? I say, what is, I'm just going to pick a number, which I think model cannot just predict, and I ask it to kind of multiply the two things. What it does, it realizes that, the model realizes immediately that, oh, that looks like a calculation, and it actually calls executed, that's the name of the calculator tool, executed evaluate expression. Right? It figures out that it should evaluate the expression, and it gives the expression as the number that I have given. So it extracted out the value from the main chat automatically, and when the output came back, it was able to provide the error. It kept the pirate thing, and the answer is XYZ. Right? So what if I say the other tool that it has access to is the URL tool, which says that I can get anything from the URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of the blogs. Let's just take this one, and I can start a chat here, and I can say, what is the author and since I provided a URL, it should be able to kind of go figure out that there is a URL in here, and I have access to a tool, and look, it has fetched the content. It says execute fetch content, and what is the author recommending here, and it sends the URL. So it automatically figured out what the tool call should look like, and then it just, it got all of the data as like title, URL, description, language, and all those things, and it just says like, okay, this is the summary of what the author is recommending. Right? It has gotten the whole information and kind of build it out. So really, this is what agentic really is, and I think if I can, there are a bunch of different things. I can actually add an agentic tool. For example, Wikipedia, and there is something called tool mode. I can connect a tool for Wikipedia here, and then now when I ask something which says that what is the, and I'm going to be more specific, prescriptive, because I don't want it to kind of miss the tool, but it is not something that is required. But what is the Wikipedia definition of agentic AI? Okay. And it should be able to kind of figure out that over time it should be able to figure out when to use Wikipedia or not. Let's see what tool that it has used. It says fetch content data frame. I don't know where it is fetching from. Hopefully it is the Wikipedia, but not like, I think I just want to show you guys like what it is possible. But it has a lot of these tools. So if I look at, these are the calculators, logic, processing, no, not those. So there is a web search tool where you can connect it to the web search and like do the same thing. There is a SQL database tool which can do that. There's a news search tool. There's a directory, and you can choose what models and everything else. So there's a lot of different tools that they have access to, and there might even be like Gmail, for example, right? So you can bring a Gmail tool and say, hey, you have access to Gmail and others. So when you're building a product like an end-to-end agent, you can just do that. Like you can start to build it, and if you need multiple agents to kind of like work together, you can add another of these things, agents, and you can connect them as tools to each other, and then you can say, hey, one of the tools that you have access to is another agent. It's like, okay, so I can not only that, and I can define that as like you access this tool agent for doing XYZ work. And that is something that you're able to do. I know we went through a lot just in the small time for this, but hopefully it is making sense. And questions on this? Did it kind of like, and if you really want to just publish this, you are able to kind of just say is like, hey, I don't know what it is doing, but there are ways to kind of publish this. And I think looks like recently IBM made some changes because they bought this company. But you can embed this. This is a shareable playground, so you can actually take that and provide that as an API from a different tool, so you can call them. And so in my previous class, actually, a lot of my students use this as an API background to build their products, where they were able to kind of ask questions and like get the answers for this. Yes?
For local tools like
Can you speak up just a little bit? Sorry.
Langflow.
Yeah.
This is similar to NIN as well, right? And when you create this type of agentic workflows, and you want to either embed it in applications or use it in other scenarios, how can you make sure that you own the workflow, not necessarily this the tool that you use?
Yeah. Great question. The question is like when I use a no-code tool and there is another tool, C reference N8N, do you actually own these workflows or not? N8N and Langflow are a little bit different. N8N is really built for you just building agents for yourself and trying to use it. And that's the main use case that they're going after. It's like, hey, I want to build productivity tools for myself or my team or whatever. Langflow is really built as more of a platform that your product can actually use. So you can, millions of users can potentially call this, but this is no code. In reality, if you are going to any kind of scale, I won't suggest Langflow or N8N for that. You really want to just go Python, and you'll be amazed like how simple these things are. Right? It's no more complicated than this, but the instructions are in Python, and you're just calling an agent in Python and doing it. But as product managers, a lot of times, and including me, like we're like, oh man, I don't want to write code. And this is where it's a great learning tool. But at some point, just move on to like a vibe coding or something like that, like a Cursor. Cloud Code is super recommended, Replit, V0, and just start to kind of code up your own. Right? Like coding up some of these things are relatively easy. So I won't recommend this for like a large scale deployment. Yeah. No, this is IBM acquired this company, DataStax, right? And so they have been making some changes. Before it, so they may make more changes. So like 2 weeks ago, they just kind of rehashed the whole thing. Langflow itself is an open source, so langflow.com has the open source. You can download it, install it in a laptop or your servers. And DataStax is a hosted form of Langstack that IBM has acquired. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
I have a question. So, as you said that we can get an API from this platform, right? And then can we feed this API to GPT subscriptions that we have, and then instead of using the LLM API, so that we can basically.
Yeah, no, great question. So can I use my ChatGPT subscription to kind of hook that? Yeah, ChatGPT is a product, and the API's keys are a completely different product. So you cannot use a subscription to kind of do this.
No, I mean, we pull this agent API and then give it to our
ChatGPT.
and then
ChatGPT specifically does not support, but there are many tools like any LLM, I believe.
what about cloud?
No. So those are all focusing on using their own LLMs and providing you that. And so if you really want to use, you have to think of other product tools, or you can build your own on top of that through Replit, Lovable, others, and you can connect to these APIs.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I don't want to pay for the tokens.
Yeah. So there is for the API tokens or for ChatGPT.
For the like the LLM API tokens.
Yeah. So you have to go find some credit somewhere. I'm sure some VC is giving it away somewhere. This is true. So there's a product called Grok, for example. This is like a fast inference engine stuff, and all of them may have some kind of a free tier. Try to figure out. Go to Gemini. I think actually Google API key are generally free, I believe, to a certain degree. So one of my common tools that I use is Google AI Studio. Right, and if you have a Google account with some kind of a cache, I don't know if it is. I don't think it is charging me anything for that, but for a few API keys here and there, this is probably the easiest. So if you go to aistudio.google.com, and over here there is a get API key that you can use, and this will give you the Google API key, which you can also use. Yeah. Yes.
One use case that I've been thinking of building agent for is responding to my LinkedIn comments.
Yep.
Like posts. So
Yes.
I want to be able to build some constraints and say like what is the type of post to respond
Yeah.
to, and then do that. What would a stack for that look like?
Yeah. So first of all, you can build your own if you want, but I think one approach can be is you can use a product called relay.app, for example. It's much more straightforward. It does not need you to kind of code. And they have things like integration with LinkedIn. So you can say, whenever, just like we said, web search or calculator, you can say whenever this posts are coming in, monitor for that. And I don't know exactly what things they do. I know Reddit, this morning we actually built a Reddit integration this. So every time there's a Reddit post in a particular subreddit, you can automatically write the response of what your response would be. And you can potentially even post it there. So what I'm not sure is the only reason people are not building that possibly is like LinkedIn TOS, terms of services, might be restricting a lot of the agentic.
Yeah.
But if you're building your own, there is no restriction till they find out. So
Oh, you mean like Relay could work?
Relay may or may not be supporting that out of the box, because it may be TOS, terms of services from LinkedIn, may probably be restricting it. Right? Yeah, but something like this could work. Yeah. You can also think of building a Chrome extension. Use Cloud Code to build a Chrome extension. Actually, Manas.ai builds Chrome extension. So if you go to Manas.ai, it's an agentic thing, and
Oh, the Indian.
no, this came out of China, and it's like became equally important. You can see I have multiple Gmail account because I don't want to give them my data. But here I can actually say, build me a Chrome extension. I saw it somewhere. So it can definitely do things like build slides. You can say, build me a slide for agentic AI for product managers. And we let it run in the background. But what it can do is it can actually ideate and build the entire slide deck. A lot of my slides were actually built with AI today. Yes?
So, so now you're writing the product documents using AI. Your developers are developing using AI. Are you finding that the documentation you provide to them is changing? Like, what kind of impact is it having on the overall workflow? What do you do? Where do you stop, and where does your developer start?
Yeah. I actually think that things like Jira tickets and other may become more valuable in many ways, because you're not building for humans, writing tickets for humans anymore. You can have an agent which just reads the tickets and executes writes the code and like does the PR pull request for you. So what it means is that it's better to be organized in some ways. And so you may have like a high level alignment meeting is like what you want to build, but the actual task itself, it's good to kind of break it down and then just deploy a few agents and says like, go code it up. If you look at Jules, I guess, from Google, as well as Codex, they are trying to go after this use case where they can actually look at the issues and like automatically code it up and check in the code for you. So you come in tomorrow morning and 50 of your tickets are solved. And then it's all it takes is credit. And this is where you can see it has just built, it's building, so let it build. Yes?
Actually, as you were using all of these LLMs, a question came to my head, like how come like just 3 years ago there were no publicly LLMs available, but now like we have so many, even from China. What happened like 3 years ago all of a sudden?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Look, a little bit of a history of what happened here. The way AI research works is it works in the concept of explore, exploit, which is a lot of the research is all about exploring what solutions are out there. And then you try to exploit, just like medicine, you just try it out, which works, which does not work. And the speed of execution really depends upon how much of this exploration, how broad is your exploration, and when do you start to exploit. In this case, 2017, Google published a paper called Attention is All You Need. That really kind of like triggered a lot of this generative AI aspect of it. OpenAI was the first one to believe in it, and they actually went ahead and started to kind of build around that. And like a very small team of researchers used that paper to kind of build, and they had a breakthrough in 2021 or so with GPT-3, GPT-2, GPT-3. They started to really see value, and then they realized like there's a lot more exploitation. There is actually a post on my blog which says like history of how we got here. Might be useful, but it does not. Like that's what I kind of know of. So you can see, this is not bad, right? Like if your manager says like, hey, can you? This was my backup plan. Is like if I couldn't build the slides for today, I'll actually just give it a prompt and let it choose. Like this is well formatted and ready to go. And there, of course, this is an agentic product. You can build Chrome extensions that way. You can build software. You can build, I'm sure, if you guys have not tried vibe coding, try vibe coding, and that should also work.
Is it better than ChatGPT?
I think the better is the temperament thing. Is like, do you like its temperament and what is your model? I'll show you guys what I did to generate some of the slides, right, as well. So you get a sense of how I did it. So I'm like the use cases. I really wanted to kind of see some of the use cases. So I said, hey, the user expectation is moving from intention to intent in agentic AI. Help me create a simple visual for this. And it did something, I didn't like it. Use Excalibur-like view, handwritten with white background, caveat as a font. As I started to become a little bit more prescriptive. Also, intention expects that you define what, when, and how. Intent is more fuzzy. Keep very simple. You can see my English is not even good in there. But like this is what they had initially, it has initially drawn is like, okay, I don't really think that is a good idea. With the second prompt, it did that. So I think it didn't change. Where was the previous slide somewhere? So this is what it has initially given me. And then I said, I couldn't find the output, but I said, hey, source some of the use cases using caveat, fonts, multiple slides, LLM versus agentic. So remember I had like LLM versus agentic. So one use case per slide, simple. For example, HR LLM chat can find how many days I have on PTO, agentic can. So I actually gave it exactly what I wanted in some ways. Agentic can also file my PTO with intent and notify the team. Other two use cases, I said just diversify, give them a view of what is possible. And then this is what it came up with. Like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, I think I can live with this, right? Like, so, like, but I didn't like the use cases, so I said, hey, more varied use cases, add them to the slides. So just went ahead and kind of added them. I said 3 more, and I was getting greedy at this point, like give me more. But what I didn't want to do is like I had a thought, and I could have gone and done the research. I could have built the slide and put the fonts nicely. It's like, but why, right? I could just do this, and like my job is to, the job that you guys invited me is to kind of communicate and explain something. My job is not necessarily did I use AI or manually, painfully build the slides. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about hallucination again. So a few weeks ago, I was building my AI chef to help me like prepare food. And I agree with him. There's a big problem with hallucination, which like I put a lot of data inside, and I use like documents to upload it to the model. But every time I put pressure on the model, it just makes up stuff. And when it comes to food, this is not nice. So, and at some point I was impressed because I was telling the model like, hey, I have in my fridge this and that and that. What should I buy? I'm planning to buy from there. Make me, like, help me for the whole week. But at some point, when the pressure increases, it just makes up stuff. Where should I go learn how to control hallucination? Because I think you mentioned that this is the biggest problem right now, preventing products from going out to the market.
Build better evals, basically, right? Like, so if you build better evals, you will know if your product is ready, and if not, you start to kind of ground them with data and like training and everything else. So,
but the model itself is kind of
no, I think this is why the reason model hallucinate. If I tell them, give me a strategy for company XYZ, and it does not know what XYZ is, the model will still give you a strategy. Now, is it the model's fault that it gave you a strategy for XYZ while it does not know what XYZ is? And you didn't tell it like the way you're kind of thinking. So a lot of things, if we don't give proper inputs and we put a gun to their head, to the LLM and say, you must answer with a strategy, it just makes one up. Right? And this is where you have to kind of take time to kind of explain and tell them exactly what you want, constrain them, tell them this is okay, this is not okay. Claude's system prompt was 24,000 tokens. How long is your system prompt, right? So a lot of these things, token, the right size is like tens of thousands of words. Okay? So you have to kind of really think about, of course, it's not for everyone and all those things. But I think just know that maybe it's not that bad, but it cannot do everything. And you really have to tell us, like, if you don't know, understand, you should double check here. And like, these are the sources that you check. Whatever ingredients you provide, you must check with Wikipedia. So there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of ground it. Yeah. Let's do this. I don't know how long. Maybe it's time to kind of break. I'm happy to kind of stay around and take individual questions. What do you guys?